In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a layer mask on a photo so that you can cut out part of one photograph to insert it into another. So to get started, we are going to open Adobe Photoshop and click on Open. Next, you're going to open both photos that you took for this project, the open space photo and the small object photo. So I'm going to start with my open space, click Open. And then I'm going to go to File, Open, and to select my small object photo. And this is the photo we're going to be working with first. So first things first, my object is sideways. So I'm going to come up here to Image Rotation. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise so that I'm looking at my small object at the correct angle. So as you guys can see, my small object is an expo marker. And what I want to do is cut out my expo marker from this photo and insert it so it looks like it is going to be leaning against this column in this photo, like a giant expo marker. So to get started in cutting out my expo marker and making my layer mask, I'm going to take one of my selection tools. You have lots of options in Photoshop when it comes to your selection tools. We have the quick selection tool, which looks like a brush with a dotted line coming out of it, the magic wand tool, as well as these lasso tool options, the easiest of which is the magnetic lasso tool. So let me show you how these different tools work, starting with the magnetic lasso. Using the magnetic lasso, I can click and drag my mouse around the object that I want to cut out. And as you can see, the computer is recognizing the color difference between where I'm tracing and the background. So even if I'm not the best at tracing or drawing with my mouse on the computer, that's okay, because the computer is going to do a lot of the work for me. You know your object has been selected when you have this flashing dotted line going around your objects. We call this the marching ants. So if I zoom in, you can see that while I've done a really good job selecting the marker in some places, like over here, in others, I've missed chunks. And it's not quite perfect. Okay, so sometimes the magnetic lasso tool is really great and sometimes not so much. Now, if you don't select everything, that's okay, because we can actually edit it, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a second. First, I'm going to deselect by hitting Control D on my keyboard, or you can deselect by going to Select and selecting the deselect option. The next selection tool I'm going to show you guys is the magic wand tool, and it looks like a wand with sparkles coming out of it. The magic wand tool will work with single clicks to recognize areas that have a similar color. If you hold down Shift on your keyboard, you can click around in several different areas. As you can see, this is pretty effective, but it can take a very long time to do because I have to click on every little highlight and shadow within my marker because these are all subtle changes in color that the computer is reading. And as I click and hold down Shift all throughout, you can see that while I am getting a lot here, it's really not perfect because my marching ants aren't just going around my object, they're also going inside my object. So while the magic wand tool can be very accurate, it can also be a pain in the butt because it doesn't get in all the colors that you need it to with minimal effort. So I'm going to deselect this one. I'm going to select, deselect. The last one I want to show you is the one that is probably going to be your favorite and your go-to way of making this selection. The quick selection tool. That's the brush with the dotted line coming out of it. The quick selection tool works by clicking and dragging within the object that you want to select. As you can see, as I click and drag, it's recognizing those colors. And similar to the magnetic lasso tool, it's recognizing colors that are similar. So it's less picky than the magic wand tool. And I don't have to draw at all because I'm just clicking and dragging within the object and moving my cursor down as I go. I can also zoom in using Control+, and I can click on these areas that I may have missed by clicking and dragging and moving my mouse. Oh no! So see, I got a lot of the background here that I don't want, so I can press Control-Z and go back a step. So similar to the magnetic lasso tool, this wasn't super successful for mine, but notice that my marker is not on a simple background. You guys were encouraged to photograph your small object on a plain background, such as a white piece of paper. If you didn't photograph it on a plain background, it might be a little bit harder to select. If you did, you're probably going to have a much easier time making your selection. But your selection does not have to be perfect for us to create our layer mask, because we are able to edit the layer mask once we make it. So step 1 is to select your small object as best as you can with one of those 3 options so that you have these marching ants going around the outside of your object. Step 2 is to come over to your layer palette. Here on the right, you guys can see, I'll pull it out so that it sticks out. Okay, my layer palette, we haven't really talked a lot about layers yet in Photoshop, but layers are these invisible things that go on top of your photo so that you can add, say, painting on top. And we use them more in digital art than we do in photography, but they are still important nonetheless. At the bottom of your layer palette, you will see a button that is a white rectangle with a black circle inside. Once you've made your selection, you're going to click that button. You'll notice that now that I selected the Add Vector Mask button here, all of my background is gone. Everything that wasn't selected has completely disappeared. If you look at the layer palette, you'll see that there are now 2 thumbnails here. One on the left that looks like my original image, and one on the right that is a black and white thumbnail of my object that I selected. So with the black and white thumbnail selected over here, you can see that it's selected because there's a white box around it. I'm actually going to come over to my toolbar and grab my brush tool, which you may remember from our very first time using Photoshop. Right now I am in what is called layer mask editing mode, which allows me to either add content back that has disappeared or remove content that was selected and included in my layer mask that I don't want. At the bottom of your toolbar, you'll see that you have 2 boxes with white and black in them. White on top of black means that we are adding content back when we draw. Black on top of white means that we are removing content. And you can go back and forth between the 2 by clicking the swap button right next to it. So first I'm going to keep it black on white to remove content, and I'm going to hit Control+ on my keyboard so that I can zoom in, so I can come down here and remove this bit of the table that I didn't want included. Okay. You can change your brush size by coming up to the brush properties at the top. You'll see a white circle with a number underneath it, and you can adjust your brush size to be as big or small as you want. Don't go too big because then it's going to be harder to remove stuff. It's better to be patient and use a smaller brush size. So I'm going to just use my mouse and click and drag and draw with my brush using my mouse so that I can remove this and smooth it out. Okay, now I'm going to scroll up here and you can see that I have chunks of my marker missing. So now I'm going to swap my color so that white is on top of black, which means I'm now adding back content. And I'm just going to come up here and add back in all of these parts that accidentally didn't get included in my layer mask. And this can take some patience. And if you add back a little bit more than you wanted to, remember that you can always swap over to black on white and then remove parts of it too. So if I'm up here adding back parts of my marker and I'm like, oop, I got my background there, no problem. All I have to do is switch to black on white. And then I can remove that little bit that I don't want. Okay, notice that I'm not using an eraser or anything like that. I'm just using the brush tool. And I'm being patient. I recommend not clicking and holding too much, because then if you make a mistake, all you have to do is undo once. And it's not going to undo everything that you did all at one time. Okay. Got a little bit up here that I didn't want. All right. Once you feel like you've done a good job editing your layer mask and you're ready to apply it, or if you didn't even have to edit it to begin with and your layer mask was just perfect on the first try, you're going to come over to your layer palette, hover your mouse over the black and white thumbnail, right click, and select Apply Layer Mask. Okay, before I click this, I want to show you, if you right click anywhere else that's in the wrong spot, you'll notice that you get completely different options. So it's very important that your mouse is hovering over this black and white thumbnail, right click, Apply Layer Mask. Once I hit that, you'll notice that my thumbnail has now changed. I have one, and I have this checkerboard background and the marker on it. The checkerboard background means that this is transparency. So that means that in this file, everywhere you see the checkerboard, there's no content there. It's just completely transparent. The only content here now is my Expo marker. So now I'm ready to take this Expo marker and insert it over here. So to do that, I'm going to need to select everything. So I'm going to come up to Select All, or you can use Control A on your keyboard. Now I need to copy it. So I can go to Edit, Copy, or use the shortcut Control C on your keyboard. Next, I'm going to select my open space file that I've already opened. And I'm going to go to Edit, Paste, or use the shortcut Control V on your keyboard. And you'll notice that now here's my marker. So to position my marker where I want to put it, I can use the Move tool on my toolbar to move my marker. But it's a little on the big side right now. So what I need to do is actually resize it to be smaller. Some of you may need to resize your stuff to be bigger. It's going to be completely up to you and the size of the photographs that you took and how close you took them. So to resize, we're going to come up to Edit and then select Free Transform, or use the shortcut Control T on your keyboard. Free transforming will put a size box around your object, and you can grab a corner and resize it proportionally. So I'm just going to put this here. I think maybe I want it to be a little bit taller. Perfect. And then when I'm done free transforming it to be smaller or bigger, whatever you need to do, I'm going to press Enter. All right, so now it looks like this marker's here, but I'm missing some details that will really make it look like it's actually present. You'll notice that everything else in my image has a shadow underneath it. Like, look at this chair over here. It's got a shadow. My marker has no shadow because it didn't exist in the real photo. So my last step that I'm going to do is to add shadows through a method called burning. If you look at your layer palette here, you'll see that I now have two layers. My background original image is on the base layer, the background layer. And then layer 1 has the marker that I just pasted in here. So what I need to do is select my background layer. On my toolbar, I'm going to come down. You probably see a tool that looks like a pin. This is the dodge tool, and it adds highlights. Underneath it is a little hand that looks like it's pinching, and that is the burn tool, which adds shadow. Select the burn tool, and just like with the brush tool, we can change our brush size. So make it an appropriate size brush size. Not too big, not too small. I think that's just right. Now, paying attention to where your shadows are elsewhere in the photo, you want to click and drag and hold down that mouse. As you can see, where I'm clicking and dragging, the computer is applying a shadow. So it looks like the marker is casting a shadow onto the ground. Oop, I messed up because I don't want the shadow on the table. I'm going to go to Control Z. Oops. Let's try that again. I'm going to cast my shadow going this way. I'm casting it this way because I'm trying to mimic all the other shadows in the picture to make it look realistic. We'll put a little bit underneath here. I'm just clicking and holding my mouse all at once, okay? So this time I'm not gonna go past the table. I'm just gonna go up the wall here, and I'm going to avoid the table because I don't want it to look like I'm casting a shadow on the table. So I'm gonna draw around it. And it's okay if this takes you multiple attempts to do, guys. This is your first time. But adding this dodging effect makes it look like the marker is actually there. And because I'm drawing on the background layer, this layer, not this layer, even if I am trying to apply a shadow over where the marker is, it's not going to put the shadow on the marker because it's only applying it to the background. Once you release your mouse and you click and apply a shadow in the same spot, it's going to make that shadow darker. So be aware that you don't make your shadows too dark. All right, so I'm going to make it really dark up here where it's making contact with the wall, and I'm going to make it darker down here where it's touching the floor. Okay, so that makes it look a little bit more believable, like this marker is actually in the room. I have a shadow that's casting on the floor, as well as a shadow that it's casting on the wall. Okay, once I'm done making my marker look like it's actually here in this big open space, or whatever small object you used, it's time to save my work to turn it in. So I'm going to come up to File, Save As. I always choose Save to my computer so I can find it easily. And you're going to need to save 2 copies. Okay, so we're going to call this the Layer Mask Project. And it's always smart to put your last name in the things that you are saving. And save it in a folder where you know you can find it easily. So I'm going to come to my photography folder. Here we go, Photo 1. I'm going to make sure that the Save As type says Photoshop PSD. This is going to be a file that you can edit. It's going to preserve all of your layers so that if you need to make changes, if you mess up, if you get feedback from me asking you to change things, you can easily change them. And then you're going to press Save. This window will pop up, press OK. Then you're going to come up to File and select Save As one more time. If you do it too quickly, the computer will yell at you because it's already trying to save. File, Save As. I'm going to choose my computer again. And this time I'm going to change the Save As file type to JPEG. Not JPEG 2000, not JPEG Stereo, just plain JPEG. And then I'm going to click Save one more time. When this pops up, all you need for your image quality is about an 8. Don't go lower than 8. Don't go higher than 8. Just set it to be 8. And then press OK. Okay, and then this is the file that you're going to turn in on Google Classroom, your JPEG file. I do not need your PSD. Please do not turn in your PSD because I will not accept your PSD file.